I want to ask you about Gonzaga. Is it time we stop overlooking the Zags? There's always a yeah, but with the Zags, but a pretty surgical, precision-like win last night.
I mean, did we forget that 2017 happened? I moved on already then. I thought that when Mark Few not only got to the Final Four, but led the Bulldogs into that title game, and they just, they ran up against a North Carolina team that was on a mission, losing on the Chris Jenkins buzzer beater from the year before. And so I that moment in 2017 is when I didn't want to put any yeah, but. Like, if you want to package part of the analysis of Gonzaga with they only have a limited resume when it comes to competition against elite teams, I would understand that. That is a fair criticism, but especially this year's team, the way that Rui Hachimura, who, let's remember, is still developing as a basketball player at this point, still refining his skills. Brandon Clark really emerging as a star player, and then the X factor for me, and look, I picked against Gonzaga. I am somebody who was predicting that they would not make it this far in the NCAA tournament, but my X factor for the Bulldogs is Josh Perkins. He did not play well near the end of the regular season. He didn't look good in the West Coast Conference tournament, and Josh Perkins elevating his level of play here in the NCAA tournament is a big reason why, I believe this. I don't think that this Gonzaga team will win it all, but we should not act surprised if they do end up cutting down the nets in Minneapolis.
They run up against Gonzaga's, I don't know if it's a nemesis, but what has to be considered a nightmare, which is Texas Tech's defense, because Texas Tech's defense has just been ridiculous all season long and now through the tournament as well. Do you consider Texas Tech's defense impressive or gross?
Oh, impressive. I cover college football. They play, I mean, they play a style of football that somebody who watches, I mean, it's so funny because it's not Big 12 football, right? It's like the opposite of Big 12 football. But, an SEC or a Big 10 style of football. So I love it. I'm a big Chris Beard fan. I happen to believe that he might be one of the real rising stars in coaching. I mean, he's got a limited resume in terms of only being at Arkansas, Little Rock, and then, of course, here at Texas Tech. But, man, he's been so successful even in that limited time span. I believe Texas Tech is going to win that game. I think Texas Tech's going to the Final Four, and I think that it's only in the Final Four that only having Jarrett Culver as an offensive option is going to end up hurting that team. So I do believe there's a ceiling to what Texas Tech can do, but I believe the floor at this point still has them in Minneapolis.
So I agree on Chris Beard. He's clearly a rising star. I think he's been unbelievable since he's got to Lubbock, Texas. But, I mean, last night at halftime, it's 24-16. Michigan had less than 20 points at half. Is that you are impressed and you enjoy watching something like that?
There's different ways to win basketball games. Not everything is going to be the highly skilled
Michigan had
players.
six points at the under 12 timeout. 6 points.
Hey, and let's not all go style of play or Texas Tech on this one. Michigan is at fault. This is a Michigan offense that has been woeful down the stretch. I mean, they looked great when they started the season. They looked great when they went into Chapel Hill and they beat the pants off North Carolina, on their home court in Chapel Hill. But, man, they just haven't looked good. They haven't had any good flow. They haven't had any good rhythm. Xavier Simpson just hasn't quite been the playmaker that we saw in last year's NCAA tournament run. Texas Tech defense was a big part of that, and the way that they sort of grind you down does contribute to a less than visually appealing style. But let's not act like Michigan's offense has been the best version of itself either over the last several weeks.
Fair. It's Jim Harbaugh, I think, is the problem with the Michigan offense right now.
Always. Isn't it always Jim Harbaugh's problem with the Michigan offense? Football and basketball.
Chip Patterson joins us from CBS Sports here to break down the Sweet 16. How much do you blame the officials for Tennessee's loss last night?
I'm just not a big blame the officials guy. It was a bad call, but I can't. And I understand that when we're talking about the slimmest of margins and the NCAA tournament, that I don't know, it stinks. It's a really, really hard one for Tennessee to swallow, but Purdue played really well in that game. Carson Edwards didn't have his best game. Ryan Klein was great. Tennessee they've kind of been playing with fire here in the first round against Iowa. It's hard to imagine that they're going to get every single break time and time again. And that one, they just came up on the wrong end of a bad call.
The problem was, though, wasn't it the right call because there was some contact with the shooter? Even though the shot was already off, he wasn't at the floor yet. His feet hadn't hit the floor. So I think that's actually the right call, unfortunately.
Maybe. I'll hear it. It's so tough. I feel like that's an easy access point into the NCAA tournament for some sports fans that might not watch a lot of college basketball, and that's great and that's fine. But I hate when the storyline is related mostly to officials. When you talk to college basketball coach after college basketball coach, and they'll keep coming back to the same thing. Put yourself in a position so that one call is not going to determine the game.
Yeah, I agree. And I wonder about Rick Barnes because he has totally risen that program from the dead, and he had Texas consistently going to NCAA tournaments. But once again, Rick Barnes, talented team, a 1 or a 2 seed, high seed, flames out before the Final Four. Do you put any of this on classic Rick Barnes not getting the most out of his talent when it comes to March?
No, because it was stunning it's already a little bit stunning and jarring to see a Tennessee basketball team look so well coached in the NCAA tournament. That alone is enough. Yes, Rick Barnes comes with his own narratives and his own storylines to unpack, but so does Tennessee basketball. And so for Tennessee basketball to look so strong through the regular season and into the NCAA tournament, I think what you said is perfect. The work that he's done taking that program to these levels of success is probably worth first praising. And then, now he gets to continue to write it. It was 17 years in Austin with the Longhorns that contributed to some of those Rick Barnes falling short narratives. And now he's here a couple years in with the Volunteers, and he's going to be right back in the mix for an SEC championship. I do not expect, even, you're going to lose Admiral Schofield, you're going to lose Grant Williams, you're going to have to restock. But I think the work that has been done over the last 2 seasons is going to be enough that we have to consider Tennessee a real power in that conference moving forward.
So there's 4 games coming up tonight, obviously, and really interesting matchups. Kentucky, Houston, Auburn, North Carolina, Duke, Virginia Tech, LSU, Michigan State. What game are you most looking forward to?
I mean, I'm here in D.C., so I've got LSU and Michigan State, which I think is one of the best guard matchups that we might get in the NCAA tournament. LSU's Tremont Waters going up against Michigan State's Cassius Winston. And then, Virginia Tech and Duke's just going to be a fist fight, man. Duke has gotten so comfortable taking a first punch. They get off to these slow starts, first half, second half, just other teams jump all over them, and they get comfortable grinding their way back. And I think that, Justin Robinson back in the lineup, Zion Williamson back in the lineup. We saw Virginia Tech beat Duke in a really good, well-played game in Castle Coliseum earlier this season. Now we get them full strength. So, I'm going literally homer because I'm going to be in the building. But I think that LSU-Michigan State leading into Duke-Virginia Tech is about as good as it gets.
Chip Patterson joins us from CBS Sports. Who was your national champion when things opened, and has that changed?
I had in my first Final Four Duke, Texas Tech, North Carolina, and get ready to laugh at me, Villanova. So obviously way, way off in the South. Now I'm looking at it, and I think North Carolina's probably going to win it all. They're so deep, and Duke looks a little bit beatable. It's not because of UCF. It's just because they don't have many bodies. All it's going to take is for a little bit of foul trouble or one tiny little bit of an injury or somebody get poked in the eye. I mean, right now, Zion Williamson, R.J. Barrett, Trey Jones, and Cam Reddish are playing about 40 minutes a game. The margin for error is so small. I had Duke winning it all initially. I think North Carolina right now is the best suited to go and win it all.
So we'll wrap up with this question. If Roy Williams wins a national championship this year, that would be 4 at UNC, all since 2005. So 4 titles in the last 14 years. If he's able to do that, that would double the total of Dean Smith, who had been there for twice as long as he is right now. Where do you put Roy Williams historically?
I think that Roy Williams he is a Hall of Famer. He's one of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time. And I think that the real piece to the Roy Williams profile historically that I will always come back to is that from a winning percentage standpoint, he is one of the most successful NCAA tournament coaches. It's a different beast when you get into the NCAA tournament, and he seems to always know how to push the buttons and how to get his teams ready. Some of it's definitely the style of play, the fact that he loves to have a guard like a Kobe White or a Ty Lawson or a Ray Felton that can kind of push the pace so that he doesn't have to overcoach. I mean, North Carolina fans kick and scream about how he doesn't call timeouts and he leaves timeouts in his pocket. I think that benefits his teams when they get into tournament time because they don't panic. They know that they got to go out there and do their thing, and that kind of confidence that he instills in the team, I think, allows them to be successful. So I think Roy Williams will go down as one of the greatest NCAA tournament coaches of all time and one of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time. But the fact that he's always able to end up on the right side of things in March, I think that that's what makes him really special.
Chip Patterson, follow him on Twitter for the latest from D.C. and the Sweet 16 tonight at Chip_Patterson. Read him at CBSSports.com. See him on CBS Sports HQ. Always good, brother. Thanks so much, man.